So today we're going to be talking a little bit about that XML verification Zoom meeting that'll be coming up. Since almost all of the vendors across the state are now certified to submit the MTIBRS via XML, now it's a chance for us to actually work with your agency to show you those new fields or new submission processes, and just to make sure that everything translated fine to your agency. So let me get to the next slide and I'll talk a little bit more about this whole hoo-ha. So the first thing is, again, if you're kind of wondering what is going on with this, everything is on the Montana IBRS webpage. So you can click on this link. This will be live in the PDF, or you've probably only seen it 3,264 times. So the information that you need is right on that link. The next thing is that this Zoom call, the first thing on the Zoom call, and we'll see this on the next slide, is really to submit those test scenarios. And those test scenarios walk you through all of the new fields and the changes that were made in real life scenarios. And so submitting those before you schedule, or 5 days before the meeting with your analyst, will just help you to kind of know your way around the changes. Some agencies have provided a test environment so that you can enter those test submissions into a test environment. And then if everything goes well, then they convert that over to XML, because there are some fields that you'll be collecting that you've never seen before. So they don't want to do that in production until they make sure that it works. Other vendors have said, it's not significant enough. They can kind of stumble bumble their way through for a couple of days. So it really depends on which vendor you're working with. It's also important to have those who are approving the cases, who kind of are looking for all of these new fields and making sure things are filled out at this meeting, this hour meeting, just because, again, there are new fields that we want to make sure that they're aware of. Some fields have been defaulted for you, so you don't have to check them as you have in the past. And while they're not mandatory, we really want to have people understand the importance of some of them, so that we can collect the data that has been requested umpteen times over the years by legislators, by some of you, such as that healthcare worker, educator, or legal representative. You all know that there's a lot going on in your schools nowadays, particularly after COVID. There's a lot going on for healthcare workers, particularly after COVID. The best way for us to make those cases from a legal perspective is to have that data easily accessible, where we could just pull a healthcare worker was either a victim or an offender in an incident, what type of incidences were happening and where were they happening. Was it at pharmacies, ERs, emergency vehicles, what are those called? Ambulances, whatever. God.
The
Anyway.
mobile hospital. There you go. I like that phrase.
Thank you for, kind of helping my brain as it has a little snafu here.
Because it's the third Monday.
There we go.
Yeah.
And also, we need you to keep track of the people who attend the training, even those who filled in or after the fact, so who are, meaning those who trained. Like if you had 3 people that were out on patrol and not able to attend, but you filled them in afterwards, let us know that they kind of went through that training with you to keep those hours, just so that we can, again, attach those to your match. Some of you received larger grants because you switched XML vendors, so you've got, a couple $1,000 to $4,000 in match to meet. And so it just kind of helps if we can do that. Also, your test scenario time, mark that hour on your calendar, and all of this is explained in the letter that you'll get, that kind of talks about why we're how we're certifying you, and how you can get those funds that were allocated to your agency out to you, and what you'll need in order to do that. So And just for your, this isn't a 3-day training and all of that. This is just an hour-long meeting where these changes are not significant. That was the whole point of this. But what we're trying to do is say most of these changes were to unburden you, not burden you. So just trying to, again, let you know what those changes are. So, okay, so the first thing that we're going to go over in that checklist, when you bring up the form, you're going to look at this. So obviously, we're not going to read this slide because you couldn't if you tried. There's too much writing on the slide. But the first group of information is that incident level change, I guess, made. So the spreadsheet will give you a description of what we changed via or for the XML submissions from the flat file. And we'll also give you in that second column that says validation, how we want you to validate that that change is what you're seeing in your system. And again, be it test or production. And obviously, if you see it in test, we're praying that it makes it over to production. So if you get into production and you start to see, gosh, I have to fill this field out every time, but I didn't have to in test, you'll want to let your vendor know about that. And we wouldn't mind being kept informed as well, just so we can prevent that from happening to others. So for most systems, the incidents would happen, the incident changes would happen at the case and incident screen level. And you'll need to validate this within your own system. Sometimes they're located in different places on different screens, like a secondary screen, I think, on a couple of systems that we've looked at. But your SAC analyst has been working with these vendors in certifying them and should have a good idea, or at least if they don't have a good idea of where that field is and you're having a difficult time finding it, we know who to talk to find out exactly where it is. So just work with the analyst and we'll get that taken care of. One of the biggest changes in this incident level group of changes is that suspected drug involvement. And we've defaulted this to none. So it's going to be one of those things that is important when you have people approving cases that know a little bit more about the incident, to make sure that that is checked when appropriate. And we've put this on this screen because we were having a difficult time again, and I've only talked about this 3,000 times, but a difficult time identifying when drugs were involved in incidents and what types of incidents. Because again, if there was suspected drug involvement, you're at a meth house, you're at somewhere else, and this is typically where drug deals go down. That as an officer, as a training, or if those who work in law enforcement, you see those addresses come across. But nowhere in your records management system could that be indicated other than a narrative. And narratives really aren't the best place for you to be able to pull information into a bucket to analyze it. So this drug involvement, again, defaults to none. But based on officer training and judgment, if there's evidence of drug involvement, you can check this. And when you check it, you'll be able to choose from a limited list of broad category type drugs. So you might not know that it's meth that was involved, but if this has been the location for 20 meth busts in the past, you can assume meth. No one's going to charge anything. Sometimes you don't even have an offender to charge, but you're at least kind of giving a heads up that this is another case where we have suspected meth involvement at this location. So let's see. The other thing is, and again, that distinction between this drug involvement versus suspected of using, and we'll talk about that when we get to the other two screens, is that, again, a suspected of using is you had to be suspected of using drugs, alcohol, or a computer during the commission of the crime. Well, again, we all know that not all incidents where drugs are involved, someone is high during the commission of the crime. It might just be that it's drug-related, either drug sales, drug theft, whatever. So this is a field that is going to allow us to paint a better picture of, again, that drug involvement, where it's happening, when it's happening, offenders or no offenders, so on and so forth. Then also you'll see a lot of other fields as we go throughout these the new XML format, that we have added some options to things like location, drug type, injuries, and all of those are again based on things that we have heard from you, things that we are seeing. Um, uh, we added again the marijuana sales home and marijuana dispensary itself. Those are obviously new with legalization of marijuana. So those types of things are being added throughout the tables that you'll be using. And again, we've tried to remove the redundant or unnecessary fields, or at least default them to the most likely scenario, such as cargo theft. It's defaulted to heck no, don't have any stinking cargo theft on this particular offense, rather than having you check it for the 99.9% of the time that it is no. Now it's defaulting. Doesn't mean that you can't change it, obviously. So you can change it to yes at any time that you feel it is drug involved. The next screen is the offense level. The biggest change on this is switching from the Montana MTIBRS code to the Montana Code of Annotated Laws using a bond book schedule. So this a couple of advantages for you. Number one, it's really what you are used to looking up when you want to look for bond amounts or various offenses worded the way the MCA breaks it out via the different subsections. And again, Travis in Ravalli and Kelly and good old Carbon County, they kind of spearheaded some of this, and I think it has made a big difference, and it's allowed for us to do some consistency in formatting this across agencies, across the state, and it has made it easier because vendors were then able to take this on themselves. You don't have to do this mapping anymore. You don't have to keep the bond book schedule updated. Your vendors will be doing that for you, and I think that's a huge change and benefit. Your systems will now automatically and securely send the narratives as needed for things like cargo theft bias, or if we're doing maybe a quality assurance review, you can check on a few cases and those will come to us, or we have a vehicle to deliver those. You don't have to go and print them and scan them and redact them and email them through the file transfer service, saving you countless hours. God knows you can use the time, right?
What?
And
they don't want to spend countless hours on MTIBRS?
Shocking. for ridiculous things like that. Good Lord. Gosh. And so the next group that you're going to come to on there is that peachy looking thing called the person level. And the biggest change on the person level of detail is that, again, that suspected of using drugs or alcohol during the commission of a crime used to be on the offense. You'd go in, you'd enter a, some sort of offense like PFMA or something, and then it would say, drugs, alcohol, or computer. Well, that's great, except that sometimes if there were multiple charges, officers sometimes put drug on the PFMA, but not on the aggravated assault or not on the, tampering with a communication device. And so there's a disconnect there. Either you were using drugs for all of the things that you committed, because I don't think you sober up in between offenses, or it was just, one of those things that seemed kind of like a ridiculous thing. I just checked that. So now, if the person is drunk, you say that they're drunk and everything that they did will be charged with any offense, or we will note that to the FBI for any offense that person was involved with. And for the most part, this is for arrestee, offender, and victim. Some systems have allowed even for a witness to put that down. not most, but some. And so if that's the case, hey, so be it. You can collect it. We won't actually get that at the state. That would just be um, for your own records. The next thing was that healthcare worker, educator, or legal representative, and we just kind of talked about that earlier. That again, trying to identify is the victim in the healthcare field, is the offender in the healthcare field, or is the offender victimizing their healthcare recipient? Is it the healthcare recipient being victimized by someone who's high on bath salts? I don't know. Anyway, so just some of those, that field in particular is again one of those that defaults to none. And we didn't make it mandatory because this is again one of those questions that we keep being asked. Again, you're seeing far more of these incidents coming in. And just to get a better handle on trying to pull out what, when, how, where, why, we'll want that filled out. In Ravelli and Carbon, as we kind of worked through the Central Square certification, we did see a lot of people actually utilizing that field, and I think it really did kind of move the dial on how we're looking at some of those offenses. And I know the legislature will be very interested in that in terms of legislation that might address some of these issues. And again, another one was no resident status. We're using the zip code field. Again, it'll come for the arrestee, the offender, and the victim residential address that is already entered either from the CAD or then adjusted when you enter driver's license information or scan driver's license information. So that you shouldn't be entering that at all unless you're just doing get an address change over the phone and make that manually. But it's pulling from something that we already know, and we make the judgment based on that. So that's in a table. Let's see. And just there are a few minor other changes, and they are just in additional properties for drugs and other items. We have, again, continue to submit all mutually exclusive or lesser included, and we've talked about that in previous trainings. And we collect, again, everything for both Group A and Group B arrests. And we did run some data for 2022 that we think is, again, a little low for Group B, but Group Bs will run anywhere between, I'd say, 20 and 40% of all offenses that you all turn into us, or all, offenses that are turned into us. And we'll try to make sure that we are collecting, again, those Group B offenses that are cite and release, so to speak. So some systems are making that difficult for agencies to turn those in. So we're missing a lot of DUIs, some disorderlies, some things like that that really are kind of the lion's share of day-to-day activity for officers. So that's kind of, again, what we'll cover in this. Again, it's only going to take an hour, so we're not going to take a tremendous amount of your time. If any of this kind of looks like, that causes me pause or concern, bring it up during the meeting or email us ahead of time, and we'll be happy to try and put together some information that makes it make sense to you. It's really important that we make sure that you understand why we're doing this. We're trying not to make sure that we add more to your plate. Hopefully everything we add is to take something off your plate or to make things make more sense, so that what you are doing adds value to you in some way in the long run, which will then in turn add value to your communities and hopefully the data as a whole, as we try and compare state to state, agency to agency, county to county. Any questions? And yeah,
I'm sorry,
so
Kathy. Yeah.
I was going to say there
Did
is
you
a
see chat?
yeah,
Yes.
there
Lisa
is
had asked if there was a printout of the training, and I just let her know that it's available on our website. So
you bet, and they
I
all
can
are
put that
for
in chat
every
window.
training. You bet. we turn in the PowerPoint slides, and the PowerPoint slides also have my rambling notes of things that I just went through. So you can see those notes as well, and you get a pretty good idea of what went on in the training if you don't want to take the 20 minutes to kind of watch the video. Any other questions? Thanks, Lisa.
And Lisa,
Awesome.
it'll probably be available within the next day or so.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. All right. Well, if there's no any other, oh boy, if there's not any other questions, the upcoming training next week, just uh, Jess is going to talk a little bit about the XML schedule or grant scheduled submissions. So I don't know why grant is in there, but anyway, we're the big thing with XML was that really was hopefully to allow you guys to see your data in the repository real time so that we could again start to correct errors the minute there errors or issues the minute they crop up, so that we don't get this huge backlog of things where you know, they push out an update to your system, and then pretty soon 3 months later you're realizing, oh my gosh, I haven't turned in a victim in 3 months. Oh, and that really happened. But so and then we'll talk about the MTIBRS fixable warnings that are kind of good for you to know about, because they really do indicate that there's something kind of that we need to pay attention to, because we might be using the wrong statute. We might be just, you know, missing a field that is pretty important in the overall scheme of things. And then Autumn is going to be talking to you in September about the quality assurance reviews that we'll be trying to get as many done in the fall as we can. So that's what's coming up. And again, you all contact us all the time anyway, but again, our door is always open, and we're always open for suggestions. So go enjoy your 6 extra minutes of your day. Thanks all.
Thank you. Stay hydrated, everyone. It's going to get hot today.
It is.
Yeah.
Yay.
Take care. Have fun.
Thank you.